Welcome to the week that was, but we mostly wish it wasn't, for the week ending July 25th, 2025. This is a weekly roundup of the highlights and lowlights, major stories concerning campus anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. This week I had about 35 stories to choose from. If something is happening in your neck of the woods, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. I am a professor. Please don't hate me. For more about me and my work, visit andrewpessin.com. And for all the details about today's stories and loads other stories, please follow me on X at Andrew Pessin. And in case you were unaware, today is National Hot Fudge Sundae Day, but also Talk in an Elevator Day. So why not kill two birds with one stone? Get a sundae, take it to an elevator, and have a conversation. All right, let's get to the news. Top stories, Columbia is always at the top, but especially so this week. Columbia University reached a historic agreement with the Trump administration as part of the response to the campus anti-Semitism there. Anti-Israel critics of the deal don't like the idea that Columbia capitulated to the administration. Pro-Israel folks have somewhat mixed reactions to it. There is plenty that a pro-Israel person would like in this deal. Columbia, for example, will be banning masks at protests. They'll be adding officers with the authority to actually make arrests. They are restructuring the discipline process to remove it from the anti-Israel faculty senate and put it into the provost office. They are going to carefully review some of the problematic programs, such as the Center for Palestine Studies and Middle East Studies and things like that. They will advance Columbia's Tel Aviv Center. The details were sparse, but the idea is to increase cooperation with Israeli institutions. Critics, pro-Israel critics of the deal feel that it doesn't quite go far enough. It didn't put Center for Palestine Studies into receivership as some were hoping for, and it really does nothing to address the many rabidly anti-Israel professors there who many claim are responsible for stoking the anti-Semitism there. Um, in the lead up to the deal earlier this week, Columbia did finally punish many of the students who violently took over the library during finals last spring, suspending for 1 to 3 years or expelling more than 70 students reportedly for their roles in that disruptive protest. This week, also, in the lead up to the deal, several anonymous faculty, and the fact that they were anonymous tells you a lot, signed an open letter demanding the school make serious reforms about anti-Semitism. We don't know how they feel about the deal that came out shortly after that. But in particular, this group was pushing for the accountability of the many anti-Israel professors who are stoking the flames, pushing anti-Semitic narratives on students, etc. Wasn't all positive, I suppose, from a pro-Israel point of view this past week. There were some shenanigans at Columbia as well. A Jewish faculty member was voted out of Columbia's Senate, again, widely perceived to be an anti-Israel or anti-Semitic faculty Senate, due to alleged violations of election procedures. There's lots of details in the weeds there, but it seems that what it amounted to was that this Jewish faculty member was quite Zionist, and many of the anti-Zionist professors wanted them out, and so they cooked up a very unfair scheme to remove that person, at least according to reports. Harvard also in the news this week, as always. The State Department is adding one more investigation to, in this case, they will investigate Harvard's eligibility to sponsor international students and researchers. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that, quote, the American people have the right to expect their universities to uphold national security, comply with the law, and provide safe environments for all students. The investigation will ensure that State Department programs do not run contrary to our nation's interests. While speaking of investigations, George Mason University, another investigation coming their way. The Justice Department is launching a second Title VI anti-Semitism discrimination investigation. A few weeks ago, they had announced one. That one focused on anti-Semitism in hiring and training. The new one of this week is going to focus on anti-Semitism in admissions and scholarships. These two join a third investigation into DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion practices already going on there. So, too, another Title VI anti-Semitism complaint has been filed against Stanford University, this time concerning a graduate student who was essentially driven from her doctoral program due to anti-Semitic harassment that, according to the allegation, the university did nothing about. On the plus side, I suppose, Stanford this week did suspend a student co-op house on its campus for discriminating against Jewish students by labeling them as Zionists and demanding that they leave the house. Apparently, there was some extracurricular activity at the house this past spring, and several Jewish students participating in it were asked to leave the house and told that the presence of Zionists in the group was making residents of the house uncomfortable. A internal Title VI investigation at Stanford determined that this activity had nothing to do with the Middle East, and the students had not in any way mentioned their interest or support for Zionism, if in fact they did support Zionism, but that Zionism is essentially, they were being targeted because of their perceived Jewish identity. And this is, of course, a common technique. Make Zionism toxic, and then most Jews who support Zionism to some degree or another will become toxic by default. Uh, and this one is in the as if we didn't have enough to worry about category. George Washington University published a report this week analyzing the role that the Chinese Communist Party has played in influencing anti-Israel activism in the US, including on campuses. In recent weeks, a lot of attention has been paid to Qatar and other Arab lobbies donating tens and tens of millions of dollars to institutions to influence the curriculum and hire anti-Israel faculty. Well, it turns out the Chinese Communist Party is getting in on that action as well. I am sure there'll be more on that subject in the weeks ahead. In the lawsuit legal arena, another busy week, especially for Harvard. A new anti-Semitism lawsuit was filed against Harvard by a Jewish student who had been filmed in a video that went quite viral, being assaulted, surrounded by folks and pushed and shoved and screened off with keffiyehs. He alleges that Harvard did everything basically to side with, defend, and even to honor the assailants, that they tried to get a campus investigator not to investigate it. And when he insisted, they retaliated against him by removing him from the investigation. The plaintiff also acknowledges that the main students involved were rewarded. One of them was given a prestigious $65,000 fellowship, even while under criminal investigation for assaulting a Jewish student. So apparently assaulting a Jewish student is not only not disqualifying, but quite qualifying at Harvard. Harvard was already in the courtroom this week. Oral arguments began in Harvard's suit against the Trump administration to block the cutting of funding due to the anti-Semitism there. That trial was just beginning as another trial was finishing up. The American Association of University Professors and Middle East Studies Association, two at this point quite anti-Israel organizations, had filed suit against the Trump administration to stop the deporting of non-citizen students who were engaged in anti-Semitic activity on campuses. Closing arguments were heard this past week. We'll be keeping our eye out for the result. And then finally, in the legal arena at Columbia, you might recall that janitors and other staff members had sued the university because they were trapped in the building and held hostage during the takeover of that building now the year before last academic year in the spring. But they have settled their lawsuit with the university. Terms have not been disclosed. Was a busy week in the BDS arena as well. Boycott, divestment, sanctions, this international campaign to delegitimize Israel. The European Association of Social Anthropologists, who had voted for BDS last year, this week published detailed guideline on how to implement that. And to summarize it, basically anything Israeli is taboo. They will have nothing to do with any Israeli academics. And meanwhile, in Italy, 5 departments at the University of Florence officially severed ties with Israeli academic institutions as part of what they call the academic boycott of Israel. These departments included the Department of Computer Science and Mathematics, Agricultural Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and Architecture. What editorial is perhaps most troubling about this is BDS has been overwhelmingly a humanities social science affair. It is moving into the natural sciences. In the K through 12 arena, always busy. Indeed, we probably need a separate podcast just focusing on K through 12 at this point. This week, the Brandeis Center filed a complaint against the Palo Alto School District, alleging they violated various rules and laws in pushing forward an ethnic studies curriculum. This follows a recent action by Brandeis against the Santa Ana School District for basically approving ethnic studies courses without public notice. The problem, of course, is that this ethnic studies curriculum is widely perceived to be anti-Semitic, promoting the Palestinian narrative and teaching the idea that Jews are essentially white supremacist, privileged oppressors of people of color, even here in the United States. On the plus side, the National Educators Association, that tremendously large teachers union here, you might recall last week passed a resolution severing all relations with the Anti-Defamation League, including vowing not to use their statistics on anti-Semitism in the schools and elsewhere. Well, this week the executive committee rejected that resolution. So it's off the table for the moment, but of course the damage is done in many ways. And indeed, the same week it was reported that the NEA's new handbook, the 2025 handbook, has many, which is giving guidance to what schools should teach. It has several very problematic things. It is promoting recognition of Holocaust Day by essentially erasing the Jews, by making no mention of the extermination of the Jewish people by the Nazis in the Holocaust, instead using the day to commemorate the more than 12 million victims of the Holocaust from different faiths and ethnicities. So somehow the Jews don't even get an explicit mention there. And at the same time, it has a section promoting Palestinian Nakba education, or the catastrophe, as the pro-Palestinian crowd puts it, basically portraying the establishment of Israel as an instance of racist settler colonialism, forced expulsion, etc. And finally, they have a whole segment on explaining why anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. So lots more problematic things coming our way from the NEA, to be sure. And finally, there was some news in the naughty professors department this past week, as there always is. University of Kentucky, on the plus side, suspended a law professor who was running a website called, quote, the Anti-Zionist Legal Studies Movement. This website included a petition demanding that every country in the world make war on Israel immediately until Israel submits permanently to the government of Palestine. So too, in the plus column, San Jose State University has fired a professor for her role in harassing and doxing colleagues who didn't support Palestine, as well as violating other university rules by participating in illegal campus protests. On the less plus side, Rutgers professor recently posted that the United States is worse than ISIS, supporting the allegations by many that the anti-Israel movement is really part of an anti-West movement more generally. And the same professor also posted once again that Hamas rape allegations have been debunked. And at this point, those allegations have been very widely confirmed in numerous reports, including by United Nations reports. Across the pond, University of Glasgow, not just a professor, but a rector there, which is a high administrative position, one who had previously praised terrorists from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, says that Israel is perpetrating a final solution in Gaza. Well, that's the news, unfortunately, although there were some positive moments, I suppose, this past week. Do tune in next week to see what fresh horrors next week will bring. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Pessin at andrewpessin.com, and hoping everyone manages to hold it together. Until next time.